So we're learning Igeres HaKodesh Tesvav, the 15th letter in the 4th section of Tanya called Igeres HaKodesh. And we are on page Kuf Chav Beis, where the Alter Rebbe, yesterday we learned, he explained the first of the three Sfiros. As I said yesterday, some of you weren't here. This is the chapter in Tanya which explains the Sfiros. So yesterday he explained what Chesed, Gvura, and Teferes are, and now he's going to explain the rest of the Sfiros. I want to get right to it. Bottom of page Kuf Chav Beis. And it's the last word on the fourth line from the bottom. It's the acronym V'achar Kach. Let's go. Moshe Druka, good morning. Moshe, where's that beautiful yarmulke of yours? Oh, I didn't see it. V'achar Kach bevoy hashpo lidei maaseh. When the effluence comes to fruition. Dahainu, this means b'shas ha'ashpo mamish, at the very time when the effluence is taking place. Tzarech li'yayitz, one needs to take advice. Eich lahashpia, how should this effluence come into fruition? How it should express itself? B'derech sheyuchul hamekabel lekabel, in a manner in which the recipient can handle it. Lekabel hashpa, to receive the effluence. And it gives a mashal, it gives a parable. Kigoyin, for example, sheroitze lashpia dvar chochma. Someone desires to share words of wisdom. Turn the page to page 2, top of 244. Dvar chochma. Lelamda libnoi. He wants to teach this to his son. If he will share it with his son, all of it, the way it is, the way he understands it, the way the father understands it in his mind, lo yuchol ben lahavin ulakabel. The son will not be able to comprehend it and to receive it because it's too overwhelming intellectually. Rak, Moshe, please mute yourself. Rak, rather, shetzorich l'sader loy beseder v'inyan acher. The father must organize it in a different order, in a different format. Davar dibur alefanov, each word, the words in its particular way. Miat miat, a little at a time. You can't overwhelm your son. You can't overwhelm your student. And I got a secret for you guys. You can't overwhelm your wife. Uprinas eitzezu, says the Alter Rebbe. This is advice. Isser, who's giving this advice? Your faculty of your neshama has an advice button. And if the order in which you communicate the seichel is proper, the advice button will light up and say, wait, sir. No, it's too much hashpah. It's too overwhelming. Find other ways how to say the same thing. I hear this from my wonderful wife always. Find other ways how to say the same thing. That's what we're talking about here. Let's continue. Says the Alter Rebbe, this idea that I'm sharing with you, this eitzah, this advice, it's called Netzach v'Hoid. Splendor. Netzach is endurance, victory, and acknowledgement. Shehein kloyos yoyotzois, they are the kidneys. They're analogous to the kidneys. And the kidneys, one of the functions, advice comes from the kidneys. I don't know how, we'll ask later the scientists, but the kidneys are the part of the human anatomy that gives advice, lends itself to advice. So the Alter Rebbe now explains, right? We spoke yesterday about Chesed, Gvur, and Tiferes. Now he goes to the middle set, Netzach. I'm sorry, the last set. Netzach, Hoid, and soon he's going to get to the others. So Netzach and Hoid are both the advice within the human being. Now, the Rebbe says another point about them. V'gam trein bein hamevash lemazera. They are the two. He uses a very graphic anatomic parable. They are the two testicles that, literally, simply speaking, cook. Whatever that means. Again, I am not a doctor. I don't know, but it means that kind of hazera, the semen. The semen coming from the brain of the father is, in a sense, I don't know, digested, cooked, consumed, baked in the testicles, and the testicles somehow take this drop of semen with all of its potency and make it sensible. Isser, would you mind explaining this, or you don't have an explanation? What does this mean? Train bein hamizbashlim hazera. How is that in the physical anatomy of a male?
Good question. In fact, the fact that the testes are outside of the body and contained within the sac of the scrotum is to keep them cool, because it destroys the zera if the temperature is too high. So I don't have an explanation. I have heard by the kliot, by the kidneys, that when people talk about, I feel it in my kishkas, it's that's the advice of the kliot that are in that area of the body that give a person intuition. But I can't explain the bayam.
No, but not even the bayam. But even the claws. Are you telling me that you understand in the physical anatomy the kidneys give advice? I never heard of such a thing. I heard about it.
In common usage, so people say
I'm not talking about in common use. I'm talking about in the anatomy.
No, although the kidneys filter all of the blood, but you have to go into some deep drush to figure that out.
Okay, be that as it may, this is what it says. Let's continue. Shehi hatipa. He refers to this the drop of semen hanimsheches me'amoyach that comes from the brain of the father, like we learned in chapter 2 of the first section of Tanya. Dahainu dvar chochma v'seichel, words of wisdom and intellect. Hanimshech meseichel ha'av, which is drawn from the intellect of the father. Shlo yumshech kameshahu seichel dak mioid. It shouldn't be drawn in a way that is very refined intellect b'moichei v'sichlei, as it stands in the father's brain. Rak yishtanek tzas, it should change partially. Midaku sichlei, from the refinement and of the intellectual state that's by the father. V'yesava seichel, and it should create a type of intellect she'eina dak kol kach, that's not so refined. Why? For the purpose of the son to be able to comprehend and to receive and comprehend with his intellect this idea that the father is sharing with him. This is the parable, the mashal. Now comes the nimshal. No, I'm sorry. The Alter Rebbe says this is mamish. Ketipa hayoredes ma'moyach. It's mamish. The Alter Rebbe says mamish. It's like the drop of semen that descends from the brain. Shidake mioid in the segrayim, in the brackets. It's very, very thin. V'nasis gasa, and it becomes materialized, kind of more coarse. V'chumriyas mamish, and more corporeal. B'kloyois, v'trein bein, in the kidneys and the two testicles. So this is a second idea of the mushal that the Alter Rebbe says, that we see that the two testicles, i.e. is referring to, in this case, Netzach and Yehoid. In other words, each testicle refers to another faculty, which is called Netzach and Hoid. Okay? You tell this to someone who's unfamiliar with this, they'll think you're cracked up, you're out of your mind. You don't understand? You're talking about testicles, the human anatomy, and talking about Netzach v'Hoid, Spheros, holy Spheros. Yes, this is the system of Kabbalah to use and employ wording, and sometimes the wording involves the human anatomy, but it refers to a whole spiritual idea. That's what he's doing over here. Let's continue. Netzach v'Hoid nikra shchokim v'rechayim. Shchokim v'rechayim means grinding. Netzach v'Hoid are called like the grinding tools. Shesheichim mon litzadikim. Netzach and Hoid, they grind manna for the righteous. Just as someone who grinds wheat with a grinder, al derech moshul, shemefarer achitim lechalkim dakim yoid. The grinder, it grinds the wheat, the chitim, to very small and thin parts. So too, kach tzorech av lahaktin aseichel. The father must minimize his intellect. V'dvar chokhmah, and his words of wisdom, when he's wanting to communicate to his son an idea, and to divide him into many small parts, and to tell him this and to give him the information, Moshe, a little at a time. Don't overwhelm him. B'moyat says v'das, with advice and intelligence. As Moshe and I have discussed on our routes to and from the airport in Fort Lauderdale, the importance of communicating to young people the same ideas, but in a way that they can grasp it and handle it. And I remember, without mentioning who, but some popular speakers today, when they were in yeshiva in Los Angeles with me, I wanted to bring them to a little more of Hasidishkeit and Chabad and Torah and all that. What did I do? I said, let's go out to see the LA Dodgers. Believe me, I had no interest in the LA Dodgers. I was a New York Met fan in my youth. But that was the team that Anaheim, the Angels were further away in Anaheim. The Dodgers were a little closer, I think, in downtown LA or something.
The Dodgers were originally from Brooklyn, so you went back.
Yeah, I know, but that's before my time. They left in '64, and I'm not that old of a geezer. I'm a geezer, but not that old of a geezer. Anyway, Menashe, who was a very young guy, maybe he was from New Jersey, I think. So maybe he probably followed the Dodgers, either the Yankees or the Dodgers. But anyway, back to the Tanya here. The point being that if you want to communicate a sophisticated idea to someone who doesn't have that level of intelligence yet, because they're still not developed, you have to minimize it. You have to be mocked in it. Who gives you the intelligence? How to do that? The kloyos, the kidneys, the netzach and hoid. They are the kind of the calming fact, and they to you, they say, hey, you have this beautiful idea, but just saying it the way it is, Moshe, it's going to overwhelm them. They're not vessels for this. They're interested in whatever kids are interested in today, right? So here we're going to use intelligence of how to communicate the same idea using other words, other ideas, other ways. But the underlying point is to bring them to the higher place, not to get stuck and they should remain with the lower level. No, the point is for them to see that within this minimization, there is sophistication. And on their own, as they will develop and mature, they'll say, I want more. And that's the way, if we think back to our own youth in high school and in college, that's the way we develop and we grow. And hopefully we have right teachers. And so much depends on the teachers and professors, which we all know about, unfortunately, many times. They themselves are good, I don't want to use the vernacular, but they're good messed up. They're messed up. I mean, I met some professors that were at Berkeley when I was in Marin County, from Brooklyn, Jews, geniuses, wearing, short pants because there's a flood, there's Noah's flood happening in Berkeley, California, because they still are living in the past, right? But what they were teaching was apikoursis, was heresy, and I tried dialoguing, and it's a loss, unfortunately. And this was true in Brooklyn College in the 1930s and 40s. I heard this from people who Torah Vodas students became non-religious. The Torah Vodas, Moshe, was the traditional Orthodox yeshiva that most students went to. And then they went to night college, and many of them left observant Judaism because of their professors, in particular one professor who was a Bible critic. So he, with his brains, refuted, the basic belief in creationism, and they came out as apikursim. I heard this from someone who his contemporary friends in Torah Vodas in the 30s were plagued by this. So, when it talks about a father and a son, we talk about a father who's plugged in the right way, not a father who's messed up in his brain and he's going to subtly or maybe not subtly, share heresy with his kids. And guess what? It's still happening today in different ways. The extremism that you guys know about all around you down there, and your partner Bet Shemesh over there, and all of that. It's the same thing in a different form. In the name of Torah, the name of Hasidus, preaching to throw rocks and beat people up and burn cars and all of that. Why? Because I'm holding the flag. It's the same idea. I mean, I think I told you, one of my daughters met someone, lovely gentleman, and my daughter was at that time, in the mode of an upgrade in her own connection on a higher level. She was frum and all, but and this gentleman had it. But she told her that she would like to, have an instrument to teach the children at home. And he said his mashpia told him that that's not good, and he wouldn't allow it in the house. So she never saw him again. It's like, we're not talking about some kind of, vulgar instrument that's going to play, rock and roll with sexual innuendos and words and concepts. We're talking about whatever. No. So it's across the board where the teacher, the father, the Rebbe takes the liberty of giving information, but the Kloyas Yoyit says by him or her is messed up. The advice button is really messed up because the advice button is of extreme or heretical or, antithetical or apathy, whatever it is. In other words, teachers and parents inject themselves into the students and kids. And it's almost by osmosis. It's like automatic, And what we're learning today is the importance of the Kloyas Yoyetzes. Push the advice button. Stop. Ask yourself, wait a second. Is this good? And what does my advice button say? So number one, right away, when you stop and you calm down, that itself is very soothing. It's like you're on the basketball court and it's 96-98 and the Knickerbockers and the Celtics the game decides who goes into the playoffs, and all of a sudden the guy's dribbling down, he goes, time out. Why are you telling me time out? I'm about to. Gotta calm down for a second, because you could maybe do that and then bounce someone and be called by a foul and you lose the game, right? That moment when it counts, there's that moment that it counts, that Kloyos Yoyotzos are so relevant. And it's hard when you're in the throes, in a passionate throw. It's very hard to stop yourself. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying, that Hashem has given us that ability because we have those kidneys, and those kidneys are able to bring advice, and healthy advice, how to filter the information that's so wonderful and special to the recipient. And this is true in every aspect of life. It's true in everything. It's how you say things. You send out an email. You send out a WhatsApp. You send out a text. I know that I'm guilty sometimes. I don't, it's so fast. We're such a fast move. We write it, and then you regret what you wrote. You didn't realize what you wrote or how you wrote, right? If you were to take a stop and just think a little bit, how to say the same thing, to remove a certain word, to put in another word, to couch it this way, to present it this way, the one reading it takes in a whole different way, in a positive way. So I was elaborating a little bit because to explain to you that what the Alter Rebbe is saying here isn't just like pie in the sky. It's very, very practical, the importance of accessing Netzach and Hoid. Let's continue, please. Okay? He says, now he says another nekuda, another aspect of victory of Netzach. It's to be victorious and to stand up to neged kol meineya hashashbo, to anything that seeks to prevent the effluence. V'halimud mibnoi mibayis mechutz. And the teaching that will be communicated to your son from inside and outside. Sometimes you say, I'm going to share this with my kid. I'm going to share this with my friend, with my student, with my spouse. And then something comes and says, don't do it. And And they start throwing curveballs, like I like saying, questions and doubting you, and you get all famished. And the Alter Rebbe says, that's when Netzach comes into play. Netzach is endurance. You see, so it's an interesting balance. On one hand, you have to be thoughtful how to communicate it. On the other hand, don't allow yourself to be stopped from sharing the effluence. If you believe you have a special message, a good message, an important message for your kid, for your grandkid, for your student, for your spouse, and you say it like a mensch, not like a wilde chaya, not like a wild animal, a lunatic, but like a mensch. Don't allow anything to prevent you from doing that, and use your netzach. Use Moshe. Use your power of endurance and victory to overcome. And I think we discussed that too, in different things that Igeres HaKodesh came up over the years. There's a time to sit back, and there's a time when you stand up. Yes, there is a time to stand up. That's what makes our religion and and us proper. Not just to sit back and let everything, let everyone step on you. No. And what the Gemara says that every Talmud Chacham needs to have a shmini shebeshminis, a certain amount of ego. Why? Because that's holy ego. It's not bad ego, it's holy ego. But if you let everything, go by and, then it's meaningless. Let's continue. And Mibai is what would be considered, the Alter Rebbe says, a prevention of the information from the inside. You need to strengthen yourself to oppose the attribute of contraction and limitation. Sheba'av atzmai, that's within the Father himself. Shehi meiredes dinim b'ritzoynei al benoi, where the Father arouses judgment, severity over his Son. Leimar, to say she'ein roy lekach. In other words, this guy's not suitable. The guy was in jail 10 times. He's a lost cause. So I've tried helping him 65 times, and he does it again and again and again, right? So there is that feeling. So the Alter Rebbe says, sometimes you have to overcome that feeling. And he says, so all this is aspects of Netzach. Now we're moving on to the number 9th Sphira, the number 9th emanation called Yesod. The Pidas Yesod or Derech Moshel Yesod is similar. Hiskashrus, this is the concept of binding oneself. The Father connects, he binds his mind to the mind of his Son. B'shas limudei imoy, when he learns with him. Bi'avo v'rotzain, when he does so through his love and willingness. Sheroitze sheyovim benoi. You see, look, Chevra, you could learn with someone, your own son, your own daughter, but your heart's not into it. Of course you love your kid, right? But nevertheless, during the learning, it's not palpable, it's not felt. And this I've seen, and probably you've seen, it's very real. Even our own grandkids, grandkids, I find this to be very true because we're not focused. So we'll say something to a kid or a grandkid, and the kid and grandkid, they see you're not into it. It's lip service, Yeah, of course, I'm your grandkid. The Alter Rebbe says here, hiskashrus. You want to know what? 1 second, Hillel. 1 second. I see you're asking. Hiskashrus, to bind yourself, to connect yourself, requires that while you're connecting and studying with your son, your daughter, your grandson, etc., the love and interest, ratzon, should be felt at that very time. That's what he says. Look what he says. He says, look at the words. B'shas limudei imoy bi'ava v'rotzen sheroitze sheyavim benoi. He wants his son to understand it. And without this, even if the son would have heard the same things from his father's mouth, skip the brackets. We're on top of page Kuf Chav Gimel. He wouldn't understand it as well as he does now. Why? Because the father, the teacher, she'aviv mekasher sichlei elov, because the father binds himself to the son, umedaber imoy ponim el ponim, he speaks to him face to face, not through the phone, bi'ava, with tremendous love, v'cheshek, and, how do you say cheshek, and desire, shechoshek mi'oid, and the son feels that the father wants him very much, sheyavim benoi, that the son should understand the content that he's communicating. And the greater the father's desire and pleasure he has in giving over this information, so is the information and the learning of greater. The son can understand more, for Av Mashpia Yois, and the father gives more. Because of the element of desire and pleasure that's now taking place in this communication, it adds, it increases and heightens Sichloi, the mind experience, bar chovas hadas, in the broadening of the mind, lashpia v'lum lebnoi, to give this influence and teach his son. Yes, Hillel.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to, it jumped out at me when we jumped from Netzach to Yisod without talking about Hod.
Very good, very good.
In the lessons in Tanya, and he also makes the point that there's some kind of that there was some kind of a note from the Rebbe that there was seemingly a gap in the text, because also the phrase that he had been talking about before, where it says that he had been talking about kol monei hashpa v'halimu no mibayis ubachutz. He only talked about mibayis. He didn't talk about mibachutz.
You see, I have such a gewaldige student. I can't get away with anything. He caught me. I'm aware of it, and if we have time, I was going, not today, but I guess now that you caught me, I have to get into it, so it'll be in one of the next future shiurim. But yes, the Rebbe points that out, which is, as you just said, correct. He doesn't seem to explain Hod, and he doesn't explain Mibachutz. And I believe the explanation is that they go together, but we'll talk about it in with Hashem's help in one of the next shiurim. But I'm very, very happy that you caught me. Have a good day, everyone. Sei gesund. Love you all.
Thank you.
Take care. Hatzlacha. Bye-bye.
Thank you.